welcome to another edition of the In Search SEO podcast, where we paint the town red with search marketing insights. This week we have none other than the grandmaster of local SEO for you, Professor Maps himself, Mike Blumenthal, will join us to share his local SEO wisdom. Do local marketers need to hop on the paid search bandwagon? What is the real story with Google My Business monetization and the role of reviews in local ranking? Plus, we take a look at how Google is getting busy with it. It being the topic layer. What were you thinking? I am your host, Morty Oberstein, and I am joined by she who doesn't get most of my obscure pop culture references, Sapir Carabello.
No, that's the most accurate thing you've ever said about me, Morty.
Really? Not? Because just last week I was saying you were the most nicest, most wonderful, most intelligent person I've ever met. But this is more accurate.
Yeah. No, but seriously, listen, I think you should, create a poll or something on Twitter and see how many people don't understand your pop culture references, so that I can maybe, create like a support group or something. I feel so alone.
No, there's already a Morty Oberstein support group. All my old girlfriends. You could just join the group already.
Oh, God, no thank you.
I've been married for 12 years. I don't even know. I don't remember the names of my old girlfriends, to be honest with you. I don't.
Come on, Morty.
Not all of them. I am not getting into this on the podcast. This is not happening. There's no, you cannot pay me enough money to get into this. Oh boy. Okay. We got a great episode for you. Don't forget, we put out a new episode of the In Search SEO podcast each and every Tuesday. You can find it on SoundCloud. You can find it on Stitcher. You can find it on Spotify. And of course, you can find it on the Rank Ranger blog. And of course, you can subscribe on iTunes. Oh, and do not forget that when you want to create custom data comparisons, when you want to compare your rank to your traffic, to your clicks, to your email opens, to your PPC metrics, to your net revenue. Yes, I said net revenue because you can integrate your own data. Then look no further than Rank Ranger's Insight Graph and Metric Widgets, totally custom data comparisons for any and every metric you can think of, literally. All right, so do you remember?
Don't do this. Just tell me what you want to get at.
No. I'm going to do this. We're going to do this. Do you remember?
No, Morty, I don't remember. Nor do I have any idea what you're talking about.
Oh, see, I thought you remember the time when I called it.
Called what, Morty?
Called Google using the mobile SERP renovations as the first step to ratcheting it up with changes to the search engine results page and overall enhancements. No, you don't remember?
No.
Okay. I will take it a step back. And in doing so, by the way, I'm going to actually tie in the opening monologue, the opening conversation that we're doing right now today to the opening monologue of the past 2 or 3 episodes. So if you haven't listened to those, definitely check those out. Okay. That being as it said, this is going to be epic. Okay, so here we go, because we are going to read between the lines SEO style.
I should probably take you to bet on horses or something. I don't know how you're always right.
You probably should. Yeah, I love horse races. I'm good at horse racing. I can predict lots of things, like lottery numbers. That's
really?
That's why I'm doing this podcast. I can predict horse races and lottery numbers.
Got you.
Mm-hmm. That's right. The brown horse is going to win. That's my prediction.
Okay.
What horse race? I never watched a horse race in my entire life. Although I lived in Baltimore near Pimlico Racetrack. That's what they have. Was part of the Triple Crown. Whatever. Not my thing. I do want to see, though. I've always wanted to see this. I've wanted to see, forget the Olympics. I want to see, human versus animal Olympics. Like, who could swim better? Michael Phelps or a dolphin?
You're weird.
That's amazing. No, because it's funny. Like, he's a great swimmer. He's also a dolphin. Anyway, if you'll remember, we talked about all these Google bugs over the past few weeks, and they're all popping up all over the place, and they still are, so crazy stuff right there. And we talked about how I thought that these bugs would indicate something big being in the works. And if you remember, we talked about how the redesign of the mobile SERP, the new ad label that has no color, was smaller, and, colorless URLs, and the favicons, and so forth, was an external representation of that makeover, right? An external makeover to symbolize an inner makeover, because why do you have bugs? Well, you have bugs in a system when you're trying to revamp something, when you're working on something new. So Google's been working on something big, and there are bugs in it, and the mobile SERP being redesigned is the outer representation of this inner change that Google's making, okay? And they actually predicted in the last version of the SERP News, which is a monthly news digest, a Google News digest that we do over here, that I do over here, and you can read it on the Rank Ranger blog, and you should read it every month. Just a little plug for you, okay? I wrote, it's in writing. You can see it with your eyes.
Amazing.
I said you're going to see Google pick up the pace with the number of changes that it makes to its SERP features. The SERP features being, things like the knowledge panel, local panel, all these boxes and doohickeys that Google has. Okay, SERP features, okay? Because you have to understand that 2019 has been boring. I've talked about this on the podcast before. It's been boring. Usually Google releases so many change after change and testing this, and we'll change this in the local pack, we'll change this in the local pack, and we'll test this in the knowledge panel, and we'll change this in the local panel, and how about a feature snippet that looks like this? But relatively speaking, in 2019 has been very, very quiet. But I said, after the mobile SERP was redesigned, and this being a representation of some big changes coming, the floodgates are going to open. And guess what?
What?
The floodgates opened.
We should just call you Elijah.
Elijah who?
Like the prophet.
Elijah the prophet. Thank you very much. That was a good one. Great. Very
right.
good. That was snappy.
It was. Wasn't
Very good. Okay, so am I tooting my own horn too much? Is that what you're insinuating?
No comment.
No comment. Okay, look, we're marketers. We have to toot our own horn. That could be taken so many. Okay, let's move on.
Oh, God.
If you will remember, okay? If you remember, actually, let me preface this. There's a pattern here. There's a pattern with the changes being made. There's a pattern with when they're coming. Let me just explain, okay? Google updated the look. It gave a slight makeover, if you remember, to the desktop SERP. I know we talked about mobile. Right, mobile got a whole redesign altogether, but desktop also, right? Before you had headers buttons at the top of the SERP where it said, images, if you want to see image search, it had news, you want to see news results, video, if you want to see videos, and it just had the word either video, image, right? There were just words at the top. Now it has a word and an icon. So you have like a video icon and it says videos, there's a news icon, and it says news. You get what I'm saying, right? It's not that complicated. Yeah. Ever since that, okay? And what I'm saying is, okay, let's step back a second, okay? When Google did that, what did you think? What did you say? When Google's changed its way, the mobile SERP look, the way the desktop SERP looks a little bit now, what did you say?
I mean, people probably, went like, yay, more icons in color. Woo.
Right, woohoo. It's because that's all that happened was Google changed colors and...
You have no artistic vision.
No one says yay. Oh, look, yay.
I did.
Said yay?
Yes.
Literally, you said yay?
I said yay.
Wow, look at the news today. Google added icons.
You have no artistic vision, Morty.
I used to be a poet. I have painted with oil paints before. One time, and it was a disaster.
Oh, God.
Short story. I was painting with my wife in the park. We were going to take a painting, okay? And I paint this oil painting of, I don't know what it was. And I put the painting down on the floor because we're wrapping up, we're cleaning up, and I smudged the whole painting with my pant leg. I just wiped the whole thing by accident. It was great. It looked better afterwards, actually.
I'm sure.
I still have it. I hung it up. Anyway, okay. Yay, and the changes to the colors and the icons being yay, okay? What it really did was open floodgates. All of a sudden, like I said, yes, I said it. It's on the record. You can hear me say it. You can read what I said. Tons and tons of changes to the SERP. This got tested. All sorts of things got tested and changed, okay? Like changes.
What?
Bowie, come on. Whatever. Okay, but that's not really the whole story, okay? Yes, there was an increase in the number of changes. Things are back to normal over the last week or so, but that's not the whole story. Because it's not just the number of changes, it's what's changed. And I think overall, okay, I'm going to set this up. I'm going to show you a few things that have changed, okay? I'm not going to show you. It's an audio experience. I'm going to tell you about things that have changed. I'm going to tie it all in together. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tie it into. The topic layer, okay? I think there's and I'll get to what that is in a minute. In a nutshell, okay, over the last 2 weeks or so, what I think is happening is there's an additional layer of depth that has been added to many of the features that you see on the Google SERP. Okay, let me explain. Imagine that close your eyes and take a step back to 2018. So long ago. If you were to do a search like this, okay, Macy's Herald Square, okay, Macy's being the department store, Herald Square being its flagship location in New York City where they do the parade.
Right.
Okay. If you did a search for hours of Macy's Herald Square, like you want to know when they open and close, you would get an answer box, a direct answer, a box that said simply no URL, no nothing, Macy's Herald Square opens at 7 a.m. and closes at 11 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I have no idea when they actually do or don't. I'm making that up. My father probably does. He loves Macy's Herald Square. He literally goes there every week. I'm not even getting into
That's
that.
cute.
Yeah, it's great. I'm not getting into this. Okay? Fine. But if when you did that, that's all you would get. You would just get you asked for the hours, you got the hours, and that's it. Now, okay, last week or the last week and a half ago, Google released a new way of showing this information on mobile. Okay, so now when you search for hours of Macy's Herald Square, you get the hours, but you also get the business's rating, their Google rating. The 5 stars, and you get 3.5 out of 5 stars.
Mm-hmm.
So that also shows up now. In other words, okay, same info as before, the same hours, but another layer of information, i.e., the rating on top of it. Okay?
Sweet.
That's what I mean. Yeah, sweet. Another layer of information has been added. Okay? And this is a pattern. For example, there was another change. Okay? When you search for something general, like a general product, okay, what you might find now is that on mobile, you get a refinement box, I'll call it, okay? It's that you get a carousel of the product, and underneath it, you get tabs to refine it by certain subcategories. What am I talking about? Okay, let me give you an example. I was looking at my kids have a bunk bed. I hate the bunk bed. I want to get a new bunk bed. This is true.
Okay.
Yeah. I did a search for bunk bed.
Lovely.
And and I get a whole carousel of all different bunk beds that I can buy.
Right.
Right, great. Okay?
Great.
But now I get 2 expandable tabs underneath that carousel to refine my bunk bed search.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for example, there was one box underneath that when you clicked on it expanded, and it was refined by size. So when you open it up, you get a carousel of all different types of sizes for the bunk beds. You can get a twin size, a queen size bunk bed, a king size bunk bed.
Is that even a thing?
A king size? I don't know. That'd be amazing though. King size bunk bed. I'm gonna get my children a king size bunk bed because I'm a great father. But you could refine it by size, right? So now you have bunk bed. Okay, but what size do I want? Okay, you're getting subcategory size.
Right.
Underneath that was another subcategory. Okay, this one was by style. So if I want to refine my bunk bed search by the type of style, do I want a rollaway bunk bed, a captain's bunk bed? All these different styles of bunk bed. I have no idea what those things are, by the way. Captain's.
Right.
I did writing down literally what I saw. I don't remember now what the captain's bunk bed is.
That's a shame.
Yeah, a rollaway bunk bed kind of makes sense. You roll it away, I guess. But captain's bunk bed, whatever. Okay. But whatever it is, okay, in other words, there's an extra layer of topical depth, of topical broadness that's been added to this feature, to the product carousel, okay? And fittingly, it's been added to the topic layer, okay? Because layers of topics to the topic layer. What's the topic layer? The topic layer refers to Google being able to refine a given topic, in this case, bunk beds, by subcategories. Okay, and Google introduced this term, topic layer, back in October of 2018 at its 20th anniversary updates, and it said, you could have like a knowledge panel for a dog, and you have all these tabs, for the adopting a dog or grooming the dog, all these different subcategories. So Google's gotten better at understanding an entity and dividing that entity or the understanding of the entity into subcategories. Okay, in our case of bunk beds, Google's now able to refine and break down a bunk bed into subcategories of size and style. Okay. Mm-hmm. You with me? Yeah. Okay, great. So what we have here is Google being able to offer deeper topical layers of information. Like, for example, the store hours search. Okay, we have a business. We used to get hours when we did that query. Now, not only do we get hours, but we also get the rating, another layer of topical information. I think Google has taken a big leap forward with this topic layer, with the ability to add upon layer upon layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of topical breakdown goodness, or subcategorization of an entity, if you want to call it that. It's an easier way to understand it, okay? That was not it. There's 2 more tests I want to talk to you about that show the exact same pattern. In fact, there are many more tests that came out over the last 2 weeks, and I don't have time to get into all of them, okay? So there was another one. For example, you did a search for like bed sheets, okay? It used to be you would get a carousel of just, bed sheets,
right?
Mm-hmm. All different sorts of bed sheets in the carousel, each card being another bed sheet. I didn't know there were so many different types of bed sheets, but okay. That being said, there was a test that came out that showed another tab where you can not just look at each individual type of bed sheet, but you can get a carousel of comparison sites. Okay, so you want to look at bed sheets, great. If you want sites that compare all sorts of bed sheets and prices, here's a carousel of all the different sites that do that.
Nice.
Right? So I think, by the way, a lot of it has to do with Google wanting to avoid some hot water of just showing its own products. It's got into a little bit of trouble with that, particularly with the EU. Okay, so this does get out of that a little bit, but it also reflects a better understanding and breakdown of the topic of the product into additional layers, right? The user may want to see actual bed sheets in a carousel, and the user may want to see a list of sites where they can compare different bed sheets. Right? Another layer of information. Here's another one for you, okay? You know Google Posts, okay? Google Posts, they're created by a business. They show up in the local panel, and it's all sorts of content that you can write as a business and post on the SERP right within the knowledge panel, okay? And it goes in date order, right? If I wrote one on Sunday, that's my first one. The one I wrote on Saturday is the second one in the carousel. The one I wrote on Friday is the third one in the carousel. It goes in date order, okay? They only last for about 7 days in general. Now Google started showing, and it was spotted, I think, a week ago, where Google started showing old posts that the business wrote, but that relate to your query. So, for example, let's go back to Macy's, okay? Let's say I do a search for Macy's perfume, Macy's Herald Square perfume, okay? And I get the local panel. Well, you don't get one in this case, but talking in theory here, you might get a carousel of old Google posts from Macy's, not in date order, per se, but related to perfume in the knowledge panel. In other words, another layer of topical content being pulled out by Google, being understood by Google, and being shown, being put in the face of the user. Okay? And there were, again, a bunch of other tests you can tie into this, and for the sake of time, again, I have to leave it out. But all of them, again, point to this pattern. These external overhauls, changes to the mobile SERP, changes to how the desktop SERP looks, and now you have all of these rollout after change to the SERP features that all signify, that all speak to an extra layer of topical depth on the SERP. I think Google, again, has made great strides recently with this topic layer, and it's to be able to break down topics in all new ways and show those breakdowns in all new ways. It's got a better, and by the way, there's a ton of implications to that, okay? And those implications run from an increased product competition, right? We saw that you can now have your product in the carousel, but you also have right next to it comparison sites. So now you're competing with comparison sites, right? So you have, there's just tons and tons of implications. I mean, you can go on endlessly. But I don't want to ramble on too much about this because we do have a lot of local. This is all about local.
Right.
We're just going into local here. Actually, it's not true that we're talking about products a lot, but products tie into local, whatever. Okay. Forget that. Okay, so again, simply, topic layer has expanded. A lot of the changes we're seeing, and a lot of these floodgates opening up relate to the topic layer. Big strides made there, I think. Moving on, okay, because let's keep it with local. Let's keep rolling here because we have a true local search guru, not just someone who actually writes, I'm a local search guru in my LinkedIn profile. And
I saw so
there's so many of those,
wow.
But he's actually a local search guru. And by the way, so fitting that this is the week we have him on the show because Google just got punched in the kidneys by the Wall Street Journal, showing how, some of those, or a lot of those fake business listings have real implications and kind of mess up people's lives somehow, and sometimes. So what a great time to welcome onto the show Mike Blumenthal so we can talk about Google monetization, local search strategies, reviews, rankings. Here's Mike Blumenthal. Cut one. Welcome to another In Search SEO podcast interview session. Today, we have the great sage of local SEO, the co-founder of Local University, the co-founder of the online review engine GatherUp, and the provider of local insights on the Understanding Google My Business and Local Search blog. He is, of course, Professor Maps himself, Mike Blumenthal. Welcome.
Thank you. Did you use the word cool in association with Mike Blumenthal in the same sentence?
Why not?
I think you maybe haven't met me. I am the antithesis of cool, but in being the antithesis of cool, I end up, I guess, achieving cool.
No, that's cool. That's nonconformist cool. That's the epitome
absolutely.
of cool.
Well, we'll see.
Wait, so I also, you're a big outdoorsman, right? I tried to do my research.
Well, I used to be a big outdoorsman. I was a guide for National Outdoor Leadership School for a number of years in East Africa, in Alaska, and Wyoming, 70s, 80s. But I haven't, sort of slowed down on that front a little bit.
Yeah, well,
I do ride my bike a lot, but
see, that's cool.
Well, I don't ride it because it's cool. I ride it because it's the one way for me to fool myself into getting exercise.
Right.
I just tell myself that I don't have a car. Then I ride it to 10 miles to work and then 10 miles home. So I get in a 20-mile ride most summer days. But I'm a fair weather rider. Temperature drops below 40, or if there's drips of rain, I tend not to get on my bicycle.
Well, it depends where you live. If you're in San Diego, so that's all year round.
I don't. I live in upstate New York, so it's
cold.
A couple months here.
Okay, well, I know someone. My brother-in-law's father used to ride from northern New Jersey through Manhattan on his bike every day, rain, snow, or whatever, until he got hit by a car.
That's commitment.
Yep, that's a commitment. Until the car hit him, that was it. Yeah.
He went out with his boots on.
That's right. I like bike riding. I would never bike ride in the middle of New York City if you caught me dead. Anyway, okay. So let's get into some local SEO, spam, reviews, and all sorts of good, fun things. So let me start off with, in another lifetime, I used to be a property manager in New York City, actually, because I love New York City, for about 8 or 9 years. So I'm very familiar with a lot of the big vendors in New York City. So if you ask me, who are the top plumbing companies in New York City, I can probably still rattle them off. However, when I do a search, and if I search for, plumber New York City, most of the things I'm going to see are listings like 24-hour plumber, the best 24-hour plumber, 24-hour plumbing services. None of the names I would expect to see actually show up, which begs the question, is something broken? Because oddly enough, when I look at this local service ads, the plumbers I would expect to see do show up.
Right. Well, one, your search is slightly broken. Most searchers tend to search on mobile, search on businesses nearby, and typically don't use geomodifiers in their search. And when you do that search and you're in proximity, Google does a much better job of delivering real results within proximity. Clearly, there's a fair bit of spam in New York City and in plumbing that Google hasn't, over the past year or two, done a great job of ameliorating. So there is some brokenness about Google's handling of listings in the service process. So it's a little bit of both, right? Google is interested in delivering relevant search results based on location. Location has become the prime deliverer of relevance in local. And so when you look within half mile or 3/4 of a mile of any given location, you'll find typically the ones that are the closest and real tend to surface. But, in service area businesses, there's a lot of spam, a lot of cheating, because the economic rewards are quite high. And I think one of the ways that Google has responded to that is with their local service ads that look like pack results that require higher levels of verification to get in, and you pay to play, and they're showing those more and more on the page. I wrote an article just the other day at my blog about Google testing a scrolling horizontal, what I call the local scroll pack.
Yeah, I saw that.
When you looked above that in the search results on mobile, the top of the screen had 2 local service ads, and then next down were 3 AdWords ads, and then there was an organic result from Yelp, and then they showed the local pack. So one of the ways that Google is dealing with this is by pushing the local pack down and providing other results above it in that vertical, in that market.
So first off, I'm embarrassed. I got caught with my search marketing bubble pants down by doing a search that no one would actually do except for somebody in the SEO industry. So I'm just gonna admit that.
No one does it. I'm just saying that typically in plumbers, it's a very localized search. There are industries where one would want to look more broadly, and I think when Google delivers narrow results, they would. For example, a car dealer in New York City. There are not very many, and you have to go a little further afield. So there you might. But even then, if you were located in New York City and typed car dealer, Google would expand the radius to try to deliver the query, try to answer the query.
Okay, so with that, let's say the testing format that you saw the other day, if Google's doing that, is that an admission of failure?
Well, I had a couple theories about it. I mean, one is that this was a test potentially in response to the antitrust actions that the government is looking to take, that Yelp has been calling for the last 4 or 5 years. It's a possible response to that in certain industries. it is possibly, certainly local service ads is an admission that their service area businesses tend to be spammy. They have been doing a lot of work over the last 6 months of forcing many service area businesses to re-verify, and when they do, to have to submit real signage around the location and prove that they actually exist. So Google is working to clean those up. It's a slow process because it's a combination of physical verification plus AI and machine learning to understand, which ones to suspend. So there's some of that. And there's also the economic demand at Google. To some extent, I'm not looking for culpability with Google. I mean, I look at the Google search results. This is what you have to deal with today in any given vertical. And a business needs to make a decision vis-a-vis these results, regardless of culpability, guilt, or not. Google has succeeded in winning market share, succeeded in putting most of the other local sites out of business. And thus, this is what, as a business and a consumer, your choice is. And so, to some extent, bemoaning the reality is, like we talked pre-conversation,
right?
It doesn't serve the business. I mean, yes, it may suck a little bit. Meantime, you got to make a living. How are you going to do it? And so you need to approach it that way, I think.
Okay, so let me ask then, because, well, two questions. One is, there's so many things to get into with this. Local service ads, okay, because there's so many issues, let's say with those verticals like a plumber or a locksmith or an electrician, particularly locksmith and plumbers, if you're a legitimate business and because there's so much spam out there, do you have to go the route of buying in and paying for a local service ad?
Well, I think it depends on the market and the vertical and the location.
I'm asking, like, plumbers, really spammy vertical like that in a major city like New York or LA or something like that.
Right. Again, I think you should. We've seen historically that AdWords has creeped up from 1 or 2% of the clicks in mobile to 6 or 7% or 8% of the clicks, and it may be higher in this marketplace. Organic has still served in that world. So even if AdWords clicks achieve 20% and Google manages to capture all the traffic and not send it on your website, there is still value in working the local listing because those other clicks are going someplace.
Right, for sure.
So the answer is that yes, I would take a mixed approach and I would evaluate each and I would put in place tracking so that I could make sure that the expenditures in one place versus the other is paying off. But I see a mixed approach to search of three things, really. AdWords, entity optimization, i.e. knowledge graph optimization, and organic optimization as all still providing value to a business. And it's just a question of the mix and the return on investment.
Yeah, okay. So I want to jump to another topic for a quick second. Google My Business monetization, because I would be remiss if I didn't bring that up to you. So for those who are not familiar, there was a whole survey that got sent out that sort of seemed to imply maybe that Google could be monetizing Google My Business at some point in some way and somehow. One of the things that came up in that survey seemed to imply that Google would charge to verify reviews. And I have to ask a personal question, I guess, because there are people like you and Joy Hawkins, and people who have really been in the forefront of the fight against spam. To see something like Google saying, you know what, we can verify reviews. It's not like we can't do it. Just, well, we're going to charge for it. Does that sort of make your blood boil a little bit?
So I looked at that survey and I immediately discounted it.
Interesting.
It looked to be the work of an amateur summer intern that was looking for something to do. I mean, it had like 40 or 50 questions. Who surveys that way? And Google, which has, many better survey opportunities, including, their own survey tool, it seems unlikely that reflects higher level thinking. So that's issue one. Issue two, the reality is Google is a corporation in a great tradition of monopolistic corporations, and they are beholden to their stockholders to increase income.
Right.
Doing that aggressively. The other reality, though, is that in local, Google has long had a practice of sort of a freemium model where they offer many things free or cheap, and they do it not out of the goodness of their heart, but because consumers like that data And Google gets data from it, which Google sees as gold. And so they don't charge for everything. So, I'm not going to get my underwear in a bundle about speculation about the purpose behind this survey, which I saw as a short-term aberration. I'm going to look at 10 years of Google history and 10 years of their behavior and say, gee, what are they likely to do next? One reality is that if an expensive investment doesn't generate $1 billion of income to them, they're not going to do it. Right. They need big money to change their income projections. Two, they see value in data, and so they will continue to do things that increases their data. An example is reviews. I don't know if you saw the post I did at Gather Up this week, but Google is now using review content
for the Q&A
to answer consumers' questions about Google, about the business. And that's an incredibly powerful use of artificial intelligence and machine learning to solve a very real problem and to keep that customer on Google and to make the decision about the business on Google without them having to go someplace else to get long tail questions answered. And in that context, over the last 5 years, we've seen Google, particularly over the last 4, unleash the power of their local search engine to garner reviews. So when I do an analysis of, let's say, a restaurant business with 200 locations, and I look across the last 4 years of reviews, across all 200 locations, I might see in the case of Yelp, they're getting the same number of reviews per location that they were getting 4 years ago. Maybe one review per location every, whatever period of time. Whereas Google has unleashed the review monster, and they zoomed past Yelp in a review per location volume to the point where they're generating 10, 20, 30 times the number of reviews per location on a monthly basis. So Google sees huge value in that data, huge value. They're using it, and this is one of your other questions I noticed, but there was a patent released in 2017, which indicates that Google is parsing these reviews to understand both entity details, like what they do, as well as entity detail sentiment, how well they do it. And so they use reviews from a data point of view. So they need massive quantities of reviews to effectively deliver on that promise of answering the consumer's question about the business. It's a long-winded ansser. I apologize.
No. That's why I have you on, for those long-winded answers. But
well, then you got the right guy. Get proof that I am not cool.
Whoever said long-winded is not cool.
Well,
I'm not. I mean, I would know. I'm so cool.
Yeah, right. Well, one cool guy or the other. My nickname, Professor Maps, was half a joke because I tend to be pedantic and professorial-like when giving talks about Google. It was half humorous. I mean, obviously,
I'm a former teacher, so the professorship of it all flows for me.
Right. So, all right.
So back to this. Right. Well, let me ask you about Google monetization or Google My Business monetization. Why not do it to a certain extent? Whatever. I'm not saying full on. There are certain ways. I mean, why wouldn't they do it? Is my question.
Doing it. They've been doing it.
Yeah.
If you look at the history of Google Local since 2015, and they announced that they would do it through a product that they've had great success with, which is ads. They've increasingly localized their ad tool. You can now buy, for example, promoted pins on the map.
Right.
You can have ads in the pack results. You can now have local service ads. These are all new formats in the last year. So my response to you is they're already doing it to great success and to great monetary gain. If you look at their financials. So do they need some penny ante way to piss people off? Probably not. They've got big ways to get their hands in their pocket. Okay, they have been for the last 4 years. And it will continue. Let
me ask this then. And I don't know if it's something that you have a theory on or not, but if you do, I'd love to hear it. So I was talking to Sergey Alikov a few months ago, and we're talking about the idea that local is really the natural segue to monetize voice search.
Correct.
Right? That if you're doing a query, a local query, hey Google, find me a pizza place. Right? In theory, there's so many different ways you could talk about monetizing that. Right? You can have a sponsored result. You can have here's our guaranteed listings.
You could have a knowledge graph answer.
Right. So it does local, or does increasing the monetization aspect of local sort of segue into solving their voice search problems?
Well, I think Google really was ahead of the curve in terms of implementation of the knowledge graph and of understanding a business's characteristics. So I see in a broad sense, the knowledge graph is a better way to answer questions than a link graph is. And so the answer to that is that the solutions they've been coming up with. Now, the question that begs is a monetized version of the knowledge graph, where they've done extra vetting as they do with local service ads, a better way to guarantee the relevance of those results. And I think in some verticals, maybe not pizza, but certainly in plumbers, where somebody might be coming into your home, that Google has a legal and a moral obligation to vet these businesses at a higher level than they have been doing in the past. And I think local service ads allows them to do it, right? They have Pinkerton. They do Pinkerton research on the company and the employees with local service ads. So Google is guaranteeing them with a higher level of confidence. And so if somebody's standing in their home asking for a plumber to come into their home, and that plumber comes in and does something bad, to some extent, maybe not legally, morally, Google has an obligation. Right. I think that local service ads is a way for them to deal with that. So in some verticals, it makes sense that they would be delivering that one answer, the two answer that voice supports via more knowledge about that business. And that knowledge is likely going to become from a paid ad because it includes things like serious vetting.
Right. I mean, I think it was a month ago or so, there was some sort of speculation that Google was using local service ads as a way of providing voice search answers for local queries, and there was a whole hoopla about that. But from my perspective, that was great. Why not use them? They're much better than the average local result.
Right. I mean, Google is concerned with delivering a good experience to the user and a good answer, and they got to where they are historically by doing that. So if they're going to be able to deliver a better answer in some verticals, I think they'll make that choice.
Yep. Okay, so let me jump back to the Q&A feature, which we spoke about very briefly a few minutes ago. The Q&A feature, which of course is, I find to be one of the undervalued, underutilized features, is there the potential for immense amounts of spam? In other words, why can't one business get some really nasty, terrible answers, or ask some really implicative questions, if that's a real word, that would sort of show the business that they're answering or questioning in a bad light?
So let's step back a little and look at the feature broadly, and that is that Google introduced it, I think, from August to December of 2017 as a way to increase their long tail understanding about a business. And if you look at it in the way on mobile that Google, where Google presents a business almost like a website in their mobile presentation with a tabbed interface, the Google Q&A serves to supplement that information, much like an FAQ does on the business website. So Google implemented it as a way to create timely answers to very location-specific questions that consumers might have. And then when a question was asked, they would then send that question out to a local guide where they have 50 or 60 million of them to give a quick answer. Now, it opens up possibilities on multiple fronts. On a positive side, a business can go out and leave their own questions and their own answers. And in that case, the business, I think, is incentivized to answer potential consumer questions, to save the consumer the phone call. And I think that feature is grossly underutilized. Why wouldn't every business go out and preload those questions to save that consumer the trouble of looking for an answer?
Yeah, don't let my question fool you. I think it's a great feature. I'm just asking on the other side of it.
And then initially when I did my research and looked at the quality of answers, what I saw were that 75% of them were selling opportunities and 23% initially were reputation related, sort of inappropriate questions that violated terms of service. Maybe 11% were reputation related. The others were just irrelevant questions. So there was a fair bit of crap. Now, since then, I haven't redone that original research, but since then I have noticed that many of these bogus questions have been taken down by their artificial intelligence, improved in machine learning. So Google is doing a better job of that. That being said, stuff still sneaks through. The business can report it and it will be taken down. So I think it behooves the business to monitor their Google profile, their business profile, because it, in many ways, and I refer to this as Google as your new homepage, as a mnemonic, in many ways, that information on your profile at Google is probably the most viewed information about your business any place in the world. It's placed more there than it is on your website.
That's a very good
point. So I think it behooves the business to monitor it and make sure that there isn't bad information there. There's an easy reporting mechanism. You click on the Q&A, it comes to choices, and you can report it. So yes, it is open to abuse, as is any crowdsourced platform.
Yep.
Whether it's Yelp or whether it's Google or anything else. And Google, being sort of machine learning driven, tends to look at 90% or 92% accuracy as accurate enough, which is annoying because it means that 8% is inaccurate.
Right.
And I think the business needs to understand that this is how Google views the world. They view the world as, if it's largely relevant, it's good enough. And for me as a business owner, that isn't good enough. I want precision. I want it to be accurate. So it pushes some of the workload back down to the business to be sure that it is accurate. So yeah, there's abuses possible, and certainly we've seen them in reviews. We've seen them to some extent by consumers in Q&A. But I think that any business with, paying half attention to this problem would be monitoring their Google profile regularly and doing something about it.
Yeah, that's a great point, by the way, to make sure you do keep an eye on what's going on in the Q&A feature, because maybe you're not you're asking your own questions, but users could be.
Right.
I want to talk about the Q&A from another angle. I'm going to preface this by saying that when it comes to YMYL, Your Money, Your Life, issues on the SERP, particularly medical issues, so the Google's medical knowledge panel, they've taken a lot of care and put in a lot of effort and teaming up, I think, with the Mayo Clinic to make sure the information there is accurate. But when dealing with a Q&A feature for, let's say, a health-related business, Google obviously is dealing with questions and content that's supplied by users and by the business themselves. Does the Q&A feature work for a business, for a medical business, for a financial services business, where you have sort of this gray area, or room rather, for some really, I hate to put it, irresponsible information being put out there?
Well, even I think a bigger tragedy that I have seen is when a consumer in desperate need goes there and asks for help with serious depression or thoughts of suicide. This consumer thinking that is perhaps a real-time answer system, where in reality it goes into a tumbler, and maybe an answer comes out and maybe it doesn't, and maybe the answer is accurate and maybe it isn't. So I think that Google has not done a good job of educating consumers about the feature, and I think that is, it could have tragic consequences. I've seen some examples of these, and they're very sad.
Yeah, the example you have here in the notes for the interview here, I was just reading it before, is very, very sad.
Right. And so, this is a problem of doing things at scale with machine learning, with user-generated content. And we're seeing these problems now that our society has allowed this to be the modus operandi. So I don't know if, like I said, it's only obvious at Google because they've been more successful and they have more scale. I think Google has failed in two areas in this. One is they haven't educated consumers about what the feature is really for. And two, they haven't done a good enough job. In fact, this is why with Gather Up, when this feature came out, I was so annoyed. I built a reporting tool so that businesses would be immediately alerted to new questions. Google has not done a good job of building reporting around this tool. recently, I think January, they did upgrade their API to support Q&A reporting, which we did a gather up to increase the timeliness of the reporting. But I think, really small businesses, if they can get in the habit of checking it regularly, should. But large businesses with multiple locations can't do that. So you need a tool. And Google has not really done a great job there. So this is typical of Google. I mean, they bring out a feature, they throw it against the wall, they see if they can get 85, 90, 95% reasonable answers. They think they can train, they're arrogant enough to think they can train their AI to keep the cruft down. And you end up, and then they invest in it slowly over time. They build early and reiterate often. In the real world of local, that sort of approach to relevance can be very annoying. Yeah. I get it. But like I said earlier, it's just the reality within which we live. And so as a business, you have to make these business decisions about it. You can't get on your moral high horse because it doesn't do any good. Not you and your moral high horse. You're entitled to get on it. I'm just saying as a business, they might want to think twice about it.
I mean, it is interesting in this case. I mean, it would seem that Google could have locked off the feature for certain business types.
They do. I think it's less visible on maybe schools and such, but they haven't really done a deep dive on it. They could. Yeah. They haven't. They, like I said, they view this they view success differently than we view success.
That's an understatement, but yeah, that's true. I wanna end off our serious questions with one last thing about reviews. So there's a document where Google says, and I'll quote them, I'll put my best reading voice, Google review count and score are factored into local search ranking. More reviews and positive ratings will probably improve a business's local ranking. So obviously that means that the number of reviews and the average rating that is ascribed to a business is going to help you in your visibility in local searches. To that, is there an idea that, or let me put it this way, is Google indexing the actual content within the reviews? And does the content within the review come into play in some way, shape, or form?
Well, I think that the content is probably perceived by Google as the most significant part of the review. They published a patent in 2018, fall of 2018. I wrote up the patent and my understanding of it Gather Up in February. And in the patent, they note the following. User reviews may be gathered from one or more of a blog or social network postings, emails, articles written for websites, or for printed publications such as magazines or newspapers, postings made to a user review section of an online vendor marketplace. So point one is they look everywhere for review content. Point two is they then went on to note in this patent that this was about understanding. The title of this patent was Analyzing User Reviews to Determine Entity Attributes. In other words, they are looking for both, they're looking for entity attributes, a business is an entity. They're looking for reviews to understand what the business does and how well it does it. And what it does becomes really primary. They looked at positive mentions of what they did in aggregate as increasing the likelihood of that business to show on that attribute. So in other words, Barbara Oliver Jewelry, they talk about engagement rings in a positive review more and more and more. That means she's more relevant on the term engagement rings. Google thinks of rank in terms of prominence and relevance. So reviews probably have some play, review count in prominence, but not as much as people think. And relevance, i.e. the content of the review, in terms of expanding the reach of a local business, where it shows, what it shows for, plays a huge role in reviews. So in some ways, I think that that's the most important part of reviews for Google, is using them to understand more about the business and to show that when they do understand something more about a business.
Which is why you are Professor Maps, because most people focus on the number of reviews and the rating of the review versus the content of the review.
Right. And I think the content is everything in the review.
Interesting.
And you can see this interesting tie-in between reviews and Google Q&A and local guides. Firstly, with local guides, they incentivize local guides to create longer reviews. They get that more content helps them with understanding.
That makes sense.
Secondly, then there's a new feature in Google Q&A where if a consumer starts typing, this is in the United States, I don't think it's international yet. When a consumer starts typing a question, Google looks at the words in the query and immediately starts surfacing reviews that match those entities. So they don't look for any word. They don't look for modifiers and ands and thus, and they look for nouns and verbs. And then they extract those nouns and verbs and then highlight a sentence in the review that they think answers that question. So this demonstrates clearly what the patent's talking about, that Google looks at the content of the reviews to understand attributes about the business. And now they've taken the next step, which is to not just understand the attributes of the business, but to answer unpredicted questions about the attributes about that business.
Right, and they're using the reviews to supply the answers. That case in point.
Correct. Yes, correctly.
Yep. Wow, that is amazing and very, very interesting. And I'm going to follow that very serious point with a fun question that I ask my guests. I call it optimize it or disavow it. It's where I give you either two good options or two terrible options, and you're stuck either picking between one really good option over another really good option, or one crappy option over another crappy option, which sucks. So this is the Mike Blumenthal version of optimize it or disavow it. And today I'm going to ask you, so you have a terrible choice. You could either upload really bland, boring, inconsequential images to your local profile that will show up in, say, the local panel, or you have a task of some really irrelevant, obscure, boring, bland, and all other horrible additives you can think of when creating a Google post, or when creating your own sort of Q&A using your own FAQ using the Q&A feature. Which is the lesser of two evils, that really bland, boring image, or that really irrelevant, inconsequential content that you can put into the knowledge panel yourself via post or the Q&A?
So from where I sit, the business should then get their bicycle out and go for a bike ride. Fuck this shit. I mean, right? I mean, I see bad content and bad images as a waste of everybody's time, particularly the consumer. And I see content as having fallen into this trap already, and to a large extent, gag me with a spoon. Who needs more bad content? And we have yet to get to the point where people are uploading bad images, but I can see marketers thinking that somehow more images are better with Google, and therefore we have to upload a ton of them. Therefore, let's upload images, even if they're terrible. That's the way marketers think. And it's like, let's move on. Right. Life is not long enough for either of those choices. Sorry to not play your game.
No, that's you're the first guest to say, screw this. I'm not doing this. You're the first guest to say, screw this.
All too many marketers play this game. Somebody says, you got to have more content. And they start throwing stuff at the wall.
Right.
Like, yeah, give me a break.
Oh, boy. That's a great answer. That was the most entertaining answer to that kind of question that I've ever had. So I appreciate that. That's why you're cool. It all comes full circle.
Again, my children might disagree. My wife might disagree. But if you want to think of me as cool, you are welcome to.
Thank you. But your children are never going to think of you as cool, inherently. It's like, why would you even ask them?
Well, my hope is that they think of me as a reasonable adult with whom they can have a relationship. Ooh. That's my hope.
And the key word being reasonable.
Yes, it's hard.
Reasonable is hard. I'm a big fan of using that word, actually. Is that reasonable or is it unreasonable?
Right. Yep. Well, parent, there's a lot of pressure to be unreasonable. All those voices chanting in our ears about what's a good parent. So.
It's not easy at all. Much easier to do local SEO.
Yeah. Maybe.
All right, Mike. Thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate it. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me, and I'll be glad to come back anytime you'd like more local search questions answered.
Oh, I'll take you up on that. Thanks again.
All right.
And we are back to your In Search SEO podcast, regularly scheduled programming. By the way, I didn't call him cool. I think he misheard me, and I don't know if this is wrong or not, okay? I just kind of went with it. Like, yeah, I called you cool. I mean, he is cool. I'm not saying he's not cool.
He is cool.
He is cool. He is cool, and he's beyond knowledgeable. So with that, let's hit right into the community question of the week. And this is your Rank Ranger SEO community question. Hit it up here.
What are some tips on dealing with spam in the local listings and reviews?
Right. A lot of spam, A lot of spam in local listings, a lot of spam in reviews. Just, give us some tips on how do you best handle that. Because that would be helpful. Because there's a lot of it out there. Especially if you're like in those verticals like plumbers, electricians, locksmiths, that sort of thing. We'd love to hear what you have to say, especially if you're in those verticals. Okay, by the way, before we move on, let's head back and see what you all said to last week's question where we had Craig Campbell on talking about Black Hat SEO. And we asked you, how do you stay competitive with sites that use Black Hat SEO tactics? And you said, some of you were naughty.
Oh my God.
Or you were naughty. It's like, no, you should also use Black Hat SEO tactics. That was a lot of the response that I saw.
Really?
Yeah, like, ooh, people are naughty in the SEO world. Some people are even naughtier. Itamar Blauer, who we are going to have on the podcast shortly, he said, you should report people and, say they're doing bad things with their links and stuff. Okay. So, yeah, Itamar's a little snitch here. I'm calling him out. That's not true. He's like, maybe you could do that. It is an idea. No, it's true. Look, if you're being hit by spammy, if you're being hit by spammy practices and you can report that, you should report that. Why shouldn't you take care of your job is to take care of your site?
Right.
Okay. Look, you have all the time people in ads, like they take branded keywords and they go after your branded keyword and it's against the guidelines.
Sure.
Happens all the time. Mm-hmm. Right. You should report that to Google.
Right.
So I'm not calling you a snitch, Itamar. I'm just.
We love you, Itamar.
We love you. We're just you're a snitch. Oh boy. Okay. Be sure to look for the SEO Rank Rangers SEO community question. It's on Twitter. It'll be on the podcast at the blog post that harbors this podcast. It'll be on our Facebook. It'll be on our LinkedIn. It'll be here. It'll be there. It'll be everywhere. You can just comment right on social media, or we have a form where you can comment if you want to remain anonymous. So if you want to say all your spammy Black Hat stuff, just do it in the form. So you just don't have to leave your name or anything. Anyway, I have a craving for gossip, by the way, today. I feel like I just want some gossip. I guess SEO news will have to do. It'll have to suffice, but I would just love some really juicy craziness. Like, what really goes on at Google? I would love to really know. I would love to be a fly on the wall at Google. Like, I bet you it's like a regular Young and the Restless. That's a soap opera, by the way.
I know.
Oh, so that you knew.
That's been going on,
I don't think I've ever watched. I only know it because my grandmother watched it. I never actually watched it.
I never watched it.
Is Charles still sleeping with Marianne?
How would I know?
Okay, you seem very familiar with this. Anyway, Sapir, forget gossip. Let's get into the news. Sapir, please hit it with the news.
Okay, a bit of controversy as Google was accused of scraping lyrics from the site genius.com. Google denies the accusations, but it has taken the SEO world by storm.
Yes, okay, this brings up a lot of questions in my mind. Like Google has said they pay for the lyrics, they pay a third party for the lyrics, and all sorts of other data similar to this. I would assume like stats and all that sort of stuff. But really, to me, what's the difference? What's the difference between Google paying for lyrics versus not paying for a recipe? Now, let's say I sat down and I'm the first one ever to take like The Doors, The End. Okay, it's a song. You don't have to know what it is up here. It's a song. It's a really long song. And I transcribed it. I'm the first one ever to do this. Obviously, this is not true. There's been many sites who have done this. But let's say I was the first, okay? And Google said, you know what? We're going to take your lyrics and we're going to put them on the SERP. And we're going to pull them off your site. Okay? So Google said, no, we don't do that. We pay for that. What is the difference between that and if I write a recipe, which Google doesn't pay for? Google just scrapes off of sites.
Right.
I don't understand the difference. To me, if you're going to pay for one, pay for both. If you're not going to pay for one, then don't pay for the other one.
I agree.
It's a little bit inconsistent in my mind. Okay, sorry. I rambled.
Okay, so yeah, basically it was a rough week for Google.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm. Days after the lyric incident, the Wall Street Journal ran a report highlighting how fake Google Map listings really hurt people.
Yeah, so someone asked me, what there's the two articles in 1 week really going after Google. What's going on? Like, this is first off, the local map, so the lyric thing is new, it does happen, blah, 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 fine. But the map spam and the map pack, that sort of thing, that's old news. Why all of a sudden now is this coming up? So my thought is like this: there has been a significant change in the culture, at least in the U. I know in the EU for a long time now, but in the US, some of the people running for president are now talking about openly the idea that Google needs to be regulated. Okay, where this was not a topic, let's say 4 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever it is, 2 years ago, a year ago. Mm-hmm. it's very much becoming part of the culture in some way or in some level that Google needs to be limited and regulated. And whether you agree with that, whether you don't agree with that, I'm not getting into that. But I think that part of the reason why you're seeing an uptick in these sort of articles is to, look, if you're a publisher, okay, you want to write, you want to go with the flow, right? You want to go, the people are interested in how they're relating to things, how they're thinking about things. And this fits into this sort of new dynamic of, hey, Google maybe is too big for our good. So I think that's why you're starting to see these articles pop up with a little bit more regularity. All right,
moving on. Google is bringing 3D functionality to Google Ads. A new Google ad format lets you place a rotating object in video format within an ad. Also, Google is releasing a special Google ad format for YouTube live broadcasts.
360 video? Pretty nifty. It's really nifty. It's like, you have like inside the ad, it's like imagine like, I don't know, you're selling like a mosquito eater. I just bought one. It just came to my head. Yeah, at random.
Oh
I know.
my God.
So, my wife was getting bit up, so she's like, buy one of those things. I don't know if they work yet. I ordered it. It didn't show up yet. And in the ad, imagine you had this mosquito eater canister thing, and it's just spinning around so you can see it from all angles.
That's
amazing,
wow.
right? Because when I saw the back of it, I'm like, wow, this is so different than the front of it. Okay.
Thank you, Morty.
All right. Moving on.
So, a new Google Ads test has a carousel of smaller ads entitled People Also Considered, appearing under one large ads.
So you had one giant ad, and underneath it was a carousel of smaller ads, and the competitors' ads, right?
Right.
And that carousel was headed, the title of the carousel was People Also Considered, and I hate that title.
Why?
Because, first off, so normally you do a query, right? And you bring up the ads, and there's maybe your ad, maybe some competitors' ads, and Google's, being pretty, I don't know what the right word is, impartial about it, right?
Right.
So here's this ad, it's the first one, here's the ad, it's the second one, here's the ad, it's the third one. Now what Google's saying, it's just a test, by the way, it didn't come out, it's a test.
Okay.
And one person found it, it couldn't be reproduced, okay? So it's like, it's out there. It's indicative. It's indicative. But now you have this thing, so you have your first ad, your second ad, right? Google's impartial. Now you have this carousel, People Also Considered, meaning like, you want to go with that person and their ad? No. People also consider this. Don't do that. It's like the title almost says like, don't go with that first ad. Also consider this, please. I'm exaggerating a little bit. But but the title does.
It's pretty straightforward.
No, it's not.
It is.
No, we can argue, but we've argued about this. When you write, people also consider, okay? It's like people also search for. It's a little bit different than that. Okay, here are some more options for you. People also consider them like, you might, because here you're talking about spending money, right? People also consider me like, yeah, you have this one, but people are also considering this. Like, maybe don't go there. And I agree. Some people will take it your way. Like, it's fine. It's more options. And I think some people will take that title to saying, well, you also consider this. Well, maybe I shouldn't get that one because people are considering this. If I told you, for example, the first ad, no one's telling me anybody's considering it, right? This is the first ad. It's a big, giant ad. If I told you, you know what? People are also considering this, not that. Would you look at the second thing?
Probably not.
Yeah, no, I would. I'm like, oh, people are considering this? Oh, I don't want to go against what people are saying. People are considering this. I should consider this. I think there's a little bit more psychological marketing meaning to that title than just here are some more options. That's all I'm saying. We can agree to disagree.
Okay, let's agree to disagree.
Okay, fine. Sheesh. A tough crowd today. All right, then. Okay, so now is the best part of the show. It is upon us. Forget all the insights. Forget all the news.
I'm scared.
Oh, are you scared? Forget all the arguments about ad title carousels. That didn't come out right. But you know what I mean, okay?
Yeah.
It's time for pure silliness. It's time for the Insert SEO Fun Send-Off question. So, Caesar talking about lyrics this week because Google got caught scraping lyrics. So they said, no, we didn't. And I'm not taking a side. I'm just giving you the information. We don't take sides in this podcast. You could read between the lines there. This week, because of the lyrics scandal, I want to know if Google had a theme song. what would it be? Like a theme song. Let me explain what I mean by theme song, okay? Boxer walks into the ring, they play the music, or a wrestler walks down, Hulk Hogan is playing the music, or a guy gets at the bat in baseball and they play music.
Right.
Right? The theme music for the
Thank
person,
you
like,
for-
Rocky.
Thank you for, your explanation.
I have to explain.
I'm
Not
like,
for
wow. I don't
for
know what-
anybody out in the audience who may not know what a theme song is. I'm
Thank you,
explaining
Morty.
it. You're
Thank
welcome
you.
on their behalf. On their behalf. Okay. So you know what? Go ahead, take it away. What's Google's theme song? I was gonna go first, but since you're giving me a hard time.
Ouch. Okay. Let me go first. Did you see the movie Requiem for a Dream?
For a dream.
I think it's
who is in that?
2000s. Jared Leto.
You know what? I think you just beat me in my own game. I did not see that.
Really?
Oh no, I've lost a pop culture game. It's
Yay!
like Morty 4000, Sapir 1.
Come on.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't see it. Okay.
Anyways, there's the famous soundtrack for that movie that goes
Okay.
like dun-na, dun-na-na-na, dun-na-na-na,
Oh yeah, now I know it.
dun-na-na. Anyway,
Uh-huh.
okay, I think I kind of, I don't know. I would put that as a soundtrack for Google.
But-
Because I don't know, Google scares me sometimes, and
scares
also we're all a little addicted to it. I don't know if you know, but Requiem for a Dream is like a movie for I think a heroin addict,
Oh, so-
teenager, blah blah blah.
No, I didn't see it.
Never mind.
Okay, so no, please, it's dark. Yes, we're addicted to it.
Yes.
So you've picked an entire soundtrack
Yes.
as the theme song.
Yes.
You can't pick a soundtrack as
Why?
a theme song. It's like
Why?
Because imagine when the boxer goes into the ring, they have to play a whole soundtrack. You'd be there for 45 minutes.
I mean, you use Google all the time. Trust me, like the soundtrack will just keep on,
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh
Dun-na,
yeah. Okay. You know what?
dun-na.
Okay. And as for me, you can thank me for saving you from Sapir's humming. Since Google has been under fire for this whole lyrics thing and the whole spammy listing in the Google My Business thing, I would say Google's theme song, at least currently, would be "Hit Me With Your Best Shot" by the great Pat Benatar.
I have no idea.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry.
Hit me with your best shot. No, nothing.
Morty,
oh my
you're old.
goodness.
I'm sorry.
Not that old, okay? Wow. Okay? It's sort of like a
Wait,
message.
sing it again.
I'm not. I can't. It's not, there are certain songs within my vocal range, and there are certain songs that are not within my vocal range. This is one that's outside of it.
Just
And-
try. Come on.
No.
Come on, Morty.
No.
People want to.
How much are you gonna
People
pay
wanna
me?
listen
I'll do
to
it for
it.
money. I'll do anything for money. It's terrible.
Do it for your fans.
Not doing it. Okay. Let me explain why. Because you hit me with your best shot. It's like, telling the SEO industry or all the naysayers out there, like the Wall Street Journal, naysayers. Like, come on, hit me with your best shot. You get it? And that'll do it for us at the In Search SEO podcast this week. Do not forget to tune in next week on Tuesday for an all-new episode of, I'll say it again, the In Search SEO podcast. One more time for brand recognition, the In Search SEO podcast. It's in search because we're all in search of something. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.